This is Sizwe Tropical Diseases Hospital, the only hospital in Gauteng province where patients with multi-drug resistant tuberculosis are admitted until they are no longer infectious. Most of the patients that make it to Sizwe do survive, as MDR-TB is a treatable condition. But they pay a huge price because they are away from their family and means of livelihood for many weeks, months, or even years.
Patients that come to Sizwe Hospital are referred from the clinics or the hospitals after they've been diagnosed MDR or XDR-TB. When patients get to our hospital, the conditions vary. Some of them, and most of them, I would say, are very ill. Some of them come on wheelchairs, and some of them can't even walk.
Many of these patients are between 25 and 45 years old, their most productive years.
Surely, I think first of all, the big challenge is to make peace with the diagnosis. I don't think it's easy to have a diagnosis like MDR-TB. It is not easy for them to be removed from their homes, away from their families for the long stay or the short stay. Immediately when they get admitted, we will start their treatment because surely that is very, very critical. We manage them for the period until they're non-infectious, which will mean that they will have a culture that's negative. We then discharge them with treatment and with transport to the referral facility where they will then continue to take their medicine for the full period of time. But I think we can generally say that if patients are referred early enough, they do get well. I think on average we can say that about 80% of our patients get well and they are able to leave the hospital to continue a normal life.
This is Nombuso. She spent several months being treated with MDR and is now fully recovered.
Before I found out I had TB, I was just coughing, thinking it was flu. I went to the doctor for flu medicine. They gave me the flu medication. Well, I took that flu medication for quite some time and then I realized that it's not healing. Because now I was starting to lose weight, I was having shortness of breath and I was sweating at night. That's when I started to be really worried as to what is happening. And then I had to go back, and that's when they started doing the x-rays. And then when they did the x-ray, that's when they found out I have TB. I started to take TB treatment. While I was taking TB treatment, it was going well until the period of 5 months where I realized that I'm coughing blood. They had to take me back to hospital to do more tests. And that's when they realized that TB treatment is not working. I was even more worried now because I had a friend that had TB and she passed away. So I went to the hospital, they did more tests and they found out it's no longer normal TB, it is now MDR. They explained to me that MDR is multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, which is a disease that is contagious and it's only curable at the public hospitals. I had to be transferred to Sizwe Tropical Disease Hospital. When I got to Sizwe, I was quite very ill. I had to take injections every day and 27 pills per day so that I could be better. There were times that was very difficult and I really felt like giving up because I made a lot of friends and I saw most of them dying in front of me. But then I realized that I want to go back to school and finish my qualification. So I was positive and I was very disciplined when it's come to taking my treatment. I knew what I wanted. I knew that one day I would go out of Sizwe. So I really made good decisions to go there. Because if I didn't go, maybe I would have died.
People like Nombuso are the lucky ones. A recent study by researchers at the National Institute for Communicable Diseases showed that about 1 in 3 of all those diagnosed with MDR-TB don't make it to the hospital to start treatment, and of those that do not make it, 30% die. But to understand what causes multi-drug-resistant TB, or MDR-TB, we have to understand the disease itself called tuberculosis, otherwise known as TB.
Tuberculosis is one of the oldest diseases known to men. It's caused by a germ, Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and this germ usually primarily attacks the lungs but can also attack other organs of the body. The TB germ is spread through the air. Normally people, when they cough, sneeze, etc., they release droplets in the air, and that normally stays in the air for quite a while, and others will, sharing the same space, will inhale that droplet. MDR-TB is a more resistant form of tuberculosis. The current treatments that are normally used to treat TB are not effective, and therefore we cannot cure TB using the standard treatments. So MDR is essentially a drug-resistant type where we need to use different types of drugs which are a bit more toxic and are less effective than your simple or standard susceptible tuberculosis. The difficulty is that it is more severe, as I said, but also costs a lot more, and it takes a lot more time to treat this type of disease. Where we normally treat for 6 months, these patients need to be treated for up to 2 years. It's not as common as standard tuberculosis, but it's a very important type of tuberculosis that needs to be dealt with effectively. MDR-TB has been progressing over time. We've seen major outbreaks in KwaZulu-Natal and Eastern Cape, and it continues to spread. And for us to manage MDR tuberculosis in the country, we really need to understand what's the actual burden of multi-drug resistant TB in our country.
About 2 billion people, a third of the world's population, are infected with TB, but most people remain without symptoms. Approximately 1 in 10 infected people eventually progresses to active disease. Almost every aspect of its management is complicated. The only vaccine currently available, the BCG vaccine, is only effective in preventing severe forms of the disease. Initial symptoms of cough and fever are vague and can often resemble a common cold. Treatment is difficult and requires administration of multiple antibiotics over a very long period of time. One area that has seen some progress in the last few years is in diagnosis. As a new test, GeneXpert test is being introduced across South Africa, improving the ease of detection of TB and MDR-TB. TB was generally on the decline worldwide until the emergence of HIV. This is the tragic picture that has emerged in South Africa, and we now generally refer to this as the HIV-TB co-epidemic. Resistance to available drugs is a major challenge for TB treatment and one of the reasons of its continuing spread. The National Institute for Communicable Diseases has recently embarked on a nationwide TB drug resistance survey, DRS, to determine the size of the MDR-TB epidemic in South Africa.
The reason TB is a major priority, in fact the priority area for NICD, is that simply stated, TB is the major cause of death in individuals in South Africa. So each year, what we're facing right now is that there's at least 500,000 people that are having microbiologically confirmed TB. And if anything, that is a complete underestimate in terms of the true burden in South Africa. It means that out of every 100 people in South Africa each year, one individual will actually develop TB, at least one individual.
The drug resistance survey is important for South Africa in that it will help us estimate the actual burden of drug-resistant TB in the country. And over time, as we continue to use the TB medicines for treating TB, resistance is going to develop.
The additional challenges we've got in South Africa is issues in terms of the type of drug-resistant TB that we actually face. So drug-resistant TB, again, is emerging as a major challenge in South Africa, not only in little pockets of the country, but in fact throughout the country.
It was important to have individual data for the 9 provinces in South Africa because the provinces are different in terms of the population size, in terms of the TB burden, in terms of HIV prevalence in these provinces.
So the current drug resistance survey is obviously going to be instrumental in terms of informing us as to exactly what the extent of drug resistance is, as well as how it's evolved over the past few years.
And this will allow us to then plan for tackling the burden of disease as well as preventing the further development of resistance.
Even if drug-resistant TB is closer to 3 to 4%, which is what we're hoping to find, what that basically translates into is a huge drain in terms of the resources of the country to basically address the issue of treatment of those individuals.
The results of the survey will benefit the country in that we would be knowing very well in terms of where we are with the drug-resistant TB in the country, and that would enable us to actually plan to prevent further drug-resistant TB from developing and to adequately manage those that have drug-resistant TB.
The NICD has got a responsibility, and our major responsibility is being able to identify the hotspots of tuberculosis, the incidence of TB in different parts of the country, as well as hotspots in terms of drug resistance. So we can inform Department of Health's policy in terms of targeted interventions which are really geared towards controlling TB as a priority in those areas where the incidence is greatest and where drug-resistant TB is high.
At the Center for Tuberculosis of NICD, the coordinator for the South African National TB Drug Resistance Survey is Dr. Lebo Ncha.
The survey was important because MDR TB is a problem that the country is facing at the moment. We know that TB is curable, but there are cases now of MDR and XR TB that have come up. We cannot test everybody in the country, so we needed this survey to give us a snapshot of what is actually happening in the country when it comes to MDR TB. So we determined the prevalence of MDR TB in the country, and the information from this study will assist in informing the national TB program in order to make sure that we do fight the MDR cases. We initiated the study by firstly writing a protocol, then we sought ethics approval, and we were given ethics approval. Then we developed a budget for the project. Following the budget, we then developed a detailed implementation plan for the project, which informed the implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of the project. After that, we then recruited various categories of staff, which included coordinators for each province, laboratory staff, data management team, as well as a logistics team that made sure that the survey was running in all the provinces. The team that was responsible for the governance of the project was the steering committee. And the steering committee was led by the National Department of Health together with us at NICD NHLS. And it included stakeholders such as the CDC, UNAID, URC, as well as the South African Medical Research Council. For the survey, we depended entirely on the nursing staff that were working at the facilities. So what they would do is, when patients come in, they would screen them and then identify potential participants for the survey. So then after that, they would do their routine work first, and then after completing the routine work with the patient, then they would enroll our patients in the survey. So the survey entirely dependent on them. They had to do the informed consent, they had to do the questionnaire, and they had to teach the patients how to collect sputum for us and seal that package and send it to the lab. This survey would not have been possible without the support of the nursing staff at facility level, and that showed their commitment to the National TB program and making sure that we fight this disease.
Mr. Danny Latane is a field coordinator for the survey. He visits clinics around the country to ensure that they stick to the survey protocol.
My role in the drug resistance survey was to train all the facilities that were chosen into the survey and make sure that all the nurses and facility managers understand what is expected of them within the survey, and also to manage any other or troubleshoot any other challenge that arises in the survey.
Afternoon, sister. Sorry to disturb. I'm just here for the usual DRS checkup on the progress. How are we doing overall?
We're doing fine. We pick up a bit.
Is it? Okay. But the suspect register will tell a different story. Oh, well, it will validate your story. But let me quickly go to the TB room. I'll see you on my way out.
No problem.
Okay, thank you.
The field coordinator is responsible for making sure that the survey runs perfectly in every province. So their daily duties would be to visit clinics or the facilities that are participating, to look at whether they're getting all the patients that we need, and to check if there are any difficulties that they encounter. And if there are any, then they would try to solve those problems.
I mean, it was a logistical nightmare going to all the 9 provinces and make sure that these people understand and they're properly trained. We managed to motivate the nurses and make sure that they understand the importance of the survey.
We're either going to fight or we're going to agree. And let me check the suspect register. If the suspect register looks good, maybe I'll buy a Coke.
Try our very best though. Hopefully we'll meet your target.
Okay.
We rolled out the survey in all 9 provinces. I've been to 80% of all the drug resistance survey clinics or CHCs or hospitals. And then also was for me to troubleshoot each and every problem that you could find within the survey.
Wow. You guys are really doing good, eh? What's the secret now?
No, I think when we explain to them and tell them the importance of the survey, that's when they open up and give us the samples.
Okay. It's been very challenging to close up all the other angles now, because there are new problems that come up with the logistics. When we had about 60% leakages on all the 9 provinces, we had to come up with better ways of making sure that the cups are tight, they put up in an upstanding position. We came up with boxes, and then we implemented our drivers to go and collect.
Okay, the NICD driver will be here to fetch this. But let me just check if they really are giving in something or there's leakage. Okay, no, it looks good. I'll see you guys in the next 2-3 days when I come again for the checkup. But the way things are going, I think I'll buy you guys a 2-liter Coke. Maybe even some chips from here in the corner. Eh?
By all means, please. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
It was a huge logistical exercise to ensure the timely delivery of survey materials to the clinics and subsequently organizing the collection and transportation of the samples and questionnaires from all the 442 clinics back to NICD.
Once the specimen gets to NICD, it is then captured into our lab system and it is sorted. Once it is sorted, it is then taken to the lab where it's taken through a series of tests. We'll do an HIV test on the specimen, we'll do microscopy on the specimen, we'll do culture on the specimen, and if we find TB, then we'll do sensitivity tests.
Where TB is detected, the specimen is sent for further testing to check if that particular strain of TB responds to any of the 11 drugs routinely used in first-line or second-line regimens for TB treatment. At the peak of the survey, an excess of 800 specimens per day were being received at the central laboratory. Data from the questionnaires was entered in parallel into a database. The study recruited about 170,000 patients from 442 healthcare facilities across South Africa into the DRS and lasted about a year in each province. Finally, after 2 years of hard work and screening about 200,000 people, we have our results. Our study showed that about 2.8% of all those that suffer from tuberculosis in South Africa have multi-drug resistant tuberculosis. This means that the tuberculosis bug causing their illness is resistant to treatment with two of the most powerful first-line anti-TB drugs, isoniazid and rifampicin. However, the picture for multi-drug resistant tuberculosis varies from 1.6% in the Limpopo province to 5.1% in the Mpumalanga province. These results will shape how government responds to the epidemic in South Africa. After 2 years of treatment, Nombuso can get back to her family and start living a normal life again.
When I got out of Sizwe, I was very happy that I'm going back to school, I'm gonna finish my qualification, and I'm graduating in September. So that's the positive.
We have a high number of cases of tuberculosis in South Africa, with over 400,000 people estimated diagnosed with TB in the country. However, the vast majority of these people are actually cured of tuberculosis.
The information that will be gathered from the survey will be used to influence or to inform the National TB Program so that resources can be allocated properly and we can be able to have proper planning for the MDR and XDR. And remember that with MDR, it can be cured provided we find the patients early and put them on treatment.
When somebody has got the diagnosis of MDR TB, it is not a death sentence.
Some of them, they die simply because they don't finish their treatment. So discipline is very important while taking your treatment.
That is why the critical message that we also want to send out always is that the diagnosis must be as early as possible.
So I think the key message for us is that people do get tested when they have symptoms and remember that TB can be cured.
But the last very, very important message is for the patient to take their treatment for the full period of time.
TB treatment is not easy and it will never be easy, but giving up is not an option. You do not want to lose your life to something that you are more capable of overcoming.
We beat TB. It's time to